Hello, everyone. Russ, you were about to say something?
Yeah, actually, wanted to mention, we always talk about what happens if the NHL plays an Olympics overseas and what time are games going to be and who's going to be watching. Well, Team Israel played in the World Baseball Classic yesterday in Seoul, South Korea. That game aired on MLB Network at 4:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who do you think watched that game? I mean, come on.
Well, obviously, the Israeli Jewish world.
I'm part of that, and I didn't watch it. I'm glad they won.
But no one watches it. You're saying?
Yeah.
Somebody who was probably making bagels in like at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning in the greater New York area probably was listening and watching.
Yeah.
But don't we live in a DVR world? I mean, come on. It's like,
no, but when it comes to sports,
it's hard to DVR sports. It is.
Yeah, no.
I get that. I mean, but you can avoid being told things. You don't have to go on Twitter.
Well, okay. All I know is I harken back to 1998.
Yeah.
I harken back to 1998, back to the Nagano Olympics,
Right?
And that famous Canada Czech Republic game, the one where Hasek stood on his head in the shootout and stopped the Canadians. That game was at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was not like being played. It wasn't like 9:30 or whatever, like something in Sochi. It was played. It was late at night, and only diehards, and most people in Canada, well, obviously since it was an Olympics, were up. But no, if you want optimum viewing, you got to play those games either in the mornings or in the afternoons or in the evenings on East Coast time. And if it's going to be at 4 o'clock in the morning, then you're better off not even going.
Right. That's my point. Now, just to answer your question, there have been football and baseball games that I certainly have DVR'd, and it's near impossible to get from wherever I was to my house and
I know
what happened. It's so hard.
It was always hard. I mean, back in the day.
No, but it's way harder now.
No, I know. But, I remember coming back from some concert when we were playing a show somewhere and wanting to watch the Flyers Stanley Cup final game against the Red Wings and going through a toll booth and being terrified of just going through the toll booth. But I mean, and talking to the toll person or just seeing the expression of somebody's face, like that I knew. It was kind of just ridiculous. So, but yeah, nowadays you have all your notifications are set up on Twitter and all that kind of thing. So you have to really be vigilant, but it's a different world. And we can't change the time zones, so what are we going to do? I mean, and we have to.
Don't go. That's what you do. You don't go.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, are you going to find a place that's going to play that game in the United States? That's the question.
No. What I'm saying, I'm bringing this back to hockey. You don't go to a place where the time zone is so out of whack that nobody's going to watch. It's not worth it.
Right. Exactly. Same time zone for what is it? Pyeongchang, I think it is at the same time zone, I believe, that it was for Nagano. So you're talking about the same, unless they radically change. They play the games there to accommodate the East Coast of the United States, which means they would be playing games at odd times and probably would affect the crowds that they would get for those games. So it's bad for them if they do that, and it's bad for the viewing public if they do it the other way. So I agree with Russ. If that's the option, either or, then you don't go.
It's a lose-lose.
A lose-lose.
No, I'll make this argument. It's an interesting debate for sure. But you could say the Olympics contains a lot of events, right? And I watch plenty of Olympic events that aren't hockey related, and I'm fine with them being tape delayed. Like I'll watch them other times. Now I'm a hockey fan, so of course I'm going to want to know what's going on.
I hate the tape delayed events. Hate them.
I hate them too, but I deal with them. Like it is possible to avoid who won the women's volleyball tournament championship.
Yeah, but nobody cares about that. I mean,
that's not true. That's not true. And I think that, and you're right. And yes, there are more hockey fans than women's volleyball fans. I understand that, but also, remembering what the Olympics are, which is to reach out to new fans, there are a lot of people out there who are just casual fans, and they, for them, I'd rather them have hockey to watch than another no offense, Canada.
But this is the problem. This is the problem with that argument. I bet you anything that I can count on both hands the number of hockey fans that were drawn to hockey by T.J. Oshie in the Sochi Olympics. I bet I think all that did was make him more popular in hockey circles.
Yes,
and not broaden the game. I don't think there's any broadening of the game in the Olympics. I think that it's basically a showcase for the already existing talent, and that's why I think that the NHL can get away with not going in 2018 because it's going to be there in 2022.
I'm just saying for people, everybody knows 5 people that they'll absolutely hate if they're trying to tape a game that's being played there, because if you look on Twitter or Facebook, they're going to have the results and it's going to be retweeted by 1,000 other people. I'm not going to give out names, but I will hate those people. And so like, I'm hoping it really doesn't happen.
Do you remember the days with the local sports,
mm-hmm.
and they would say, if you guys don't want to know the score, turn away from your TV, and then they show the score, and you can't, and you cannot wipe off like the shit-eating grin off their faces if it's like that's the kind of stuff that everybody wants to know the result of the game right away. They don't want to wait.
Right.
No, I mean, we do live in an instant gratification world, no question about it. And I don't know. It's. I don't know that it's enough. I mean, I think there's enough reasons not to go to this Olympics that you don't need this one. But I think that they're going to go to China, and I think that then that's going to have issues. It's going to have issues like this, but they're going to go to China because of the fact that they see it as a potential to get new fans, and that's really how they see the Olympics. Because you're not preaching. There's no point in preaching to the choir, for them. I mean, they really have. The NHL has really maximized their fan base. I mean, I think that's why you're starting to see numbers go down a little bit on ratings and stuff like that. I think there comes a point at which they really played out, and to their credit, they didn't do that for years. Like they didn't play out their credit. They didn't play out their fan base for years. And we grew up in an era where the NHL was not properly, marketed to its own fans. But now it is, now it very much is. And I think you've seen it go as far as it can go. And that's why when you see these ratings drop sometimes, on playoff games or Stanley Cup final games or All-Star games or outdoor games. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it is maximized. I mean, because of the internet too. I mean, obviously because of the fact that we can sit there and watch any game we want to at any time, it also plays into that. I mean, that's a huge deal, right? So, I mean, I don't know. As a person who watches hockey games very rarely live, I don't find this a big deal. Like I very rarely watch games live, and this is my job. I spend more time, because you can only watch one game live when there's 16 games going on. So I spend most of my time watching games delayed anyway, right? I mean, so, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't know. I get it, but I think that, I don't know. It's a tough call, but I can see both arguments here.
Well, it's playing out in another sport, so I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, no, and I love that. It's a really good analogy too. And I thought you were going to go somewhere else with this. I thought it had great ratings because there was a big deal that they were.
I don't know what kind of ratings it had, but I don't know anybody that said they've actually watched.
Yeah, because I know being a part of the Jewish community here with my wife, I know how incredibly passionate they are about their community. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I would have expected. All right, so let's get started here. That was fine. We can just continue to leave that in because that was all hockey related. But it is Monday, March 6th, 2017.
I'm Michael Jello.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I don't hide behind houseplants.
Not on Sportsology, you don't.
No.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. Kind of feels like the week after. I'm a little bit hungover still from the rumor world. I have to say, the rumor, I feel that way. I feel this whole weekend was kind of a blur, and we had my son's birthday party here too with a sleepover party of 12 12-year-old boys basically, and that'll keep you up. There was no sleeping, so that I'm still feel like I'm in a coma-induced haze. So I apologize for that.
Well, I was going to say, based on the ineffectiveness of the Habs general manager to do the job that he needed to do before the deadline, he should hide in camouflage.
Those who aren't paying attention, what happened was what's reported.
I disagree. He did a good job.
Are there videos of this yet?
Yes, there's a GIF of it on Pierre LeBrun's Twitter feed.
All right, I'm looking around. Okay, so from what we understand, I saw it from Renaud Lavoie is the one I saw from.
Yes.
That
Marc Bergevin going incognito at
Marc Bergevin hid behind a plant as he left.
No, carried a plant. He actually grabbed it and carried it past the reporters.
But this is why you should always talk to your houseplants. People have always told you should talk to them. This is why.
He carried a plant. Wow. That's like how Looney Tunes is of him, like that's like the way, like Bugs Bunny would escape from a building.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy. It brings up our concept today, and I'm doing the best and worst and, or most and least effective general managers basically right now. And and I started this topic for a lot of reasons, but let's first get into the games and what's happening in the NHL, and then we'll get into that topic, okay? Because there's some interesting things, like for example, like the Calgary Flames are a team that we need to talk about right now because they are suddenly, they're very hot. I think they've won 6 or 7 in a row at this point, and this is definitely the NHL year of winning games in a row, right? This is amazing. We're seeing teams go on streaks all over the place. This is the Flames' turn, so they've won 7 in a row. Which put them in a very, very good spot for a playoff spot now. And according to my projected standings, they've actually passed.
Yeah, here's the video.
Here's the video. Okay. No. Okay. Whoa. I gotta see this thing. Okay. Hold on. Let me click this. Okay. That is it. All right. This does appear to be a joke, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It was all. It was meant in humor to get him past the throngs of media.
Grady Sass had that, so that was good.
Yes,
you gotta love it. Give him credit. Give him credit. Then that's must be fun to be the Canadian GM at a GM meeting.
Bergevin has a history of when he was a player, he was very jovial.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He's definitely a funny guy. I just hung out with him and talked to him too. He's a very good guy too.
But that job can suck the life and the humor out of any man.
But here's the one thing though, and as funny as it is definitely, not that people at the GM meetings right now are having a horrible time because it's a fun thing to get covered and it's in a fun place usually. But that is a job for for Bergeron to do that. That's not Bergevin to do that. That's not a great thing for how many Canadian reporters are there right now. That's just, I can hear the complaints. Definitely somebody in Montreal has called up somebody at the Professional Hockey Writers Association and said something about this for sure. But,
why? The reporters deserve a vacation just as much as the GMs do. Apparently the GMs had a fishing trip that was canceled today. So
yes, because of the wind, I heard, right?
Yes. So.
And that probably is a big deal. I can imagine that. I can imagine that was discussed for longer than mostly anything else at this meeting today.
Now you brought up the Calgary Flames. I did cover the Princeton Tigers facing Colgate over the weekend, and Princeton won and they advanced. And I put up a report on Sportsology, but there was a Calgary Flames player, Tim Harrison, who's a senior, who really had a great series. He had 3 assists. The guy looked terrific. He's 6'3", 205. He's a right winger. From the best that I can tell, he is unsigned. So wow. They'll have until August 15th to sign him, the same as Jankowski last year. Right. And so this is a guy the Calgary Flames fans are aware of, but not everybody, and they should know that he had a really good weekend. So I'm sure they're anxious to sign him.
Wow. What do you think of that? Do you think he's an NHL player?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Well,
I love that. When you get to go to a college game like that and see what you got, somebody you actually do project as a future NHL.
There's a couple other guys too that I think will get signed after this. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. The indication is with Calgary is that the addition of Michael Stone and Matt Barkowski and them being played as a bottom pairing has really solidified their defense. That the depth on the blue line was. They have really good players at the top end of their blue line with Giordano, with Brody. And with Dougie Hamilton, but the depth of the blue line was a little bit in question. That's why there were some rumors about Weidman being moved because he's an expiring contract. But the additions before March the 1st have helped them out, and they're getting more consistent scoring out of Gaudreau and Monahan. So everything right now, compared to when Glenn Gulletson lost it on them a couple months ago. I mean, everything is in a positive track, and they're, they look to be, it's not a guarantee they're going to make the playoffs, but right now, if they keep playing the way they are, yeah, they probably will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're sitting in the first wild card spot, which is where my thing projects them to finish as well. Which, by the way, it does need to be noted that I'm 28-8.
I thought you were going to say you were 28, and I was going to refute.
28 wins and 8 losses in the first 4 days of our projected scoring, which is, I think, I've had so many people texting me and emailing me that they're making, tweeting me that they're making money on it. It's hilarious.
Are you getting a cut?
I wish I was. I told my wife, there's more money in gambling websites than there are in hockey rumor websites. We should really consider this.
It's funny, as an aside, apparently there was a New York Yankees beat reporter who quit his job as a beat reporter and started playing FanDuel and DraftKings, and he made like $150,000 last year playing DraftKings and FanDuel.
Wow.
So I don't know why he could have kept his job and did this.
Yeah, I don't know why you couldn't do that. Because it seems like your job would even help you do that. I mean, there's no.
Well, there's an issue now. There was the NCAA has cracked down on it.
Oh, really?
And so yep. And so now you kind of wonder if other leagues are going to start following suit, even though some have been invested or some have played commercials.
Right. That is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. We've had fun. I mean, the funny thing about this projecting thing is that yesterday I was really mad because we were doing so well, and it projected based on the fact that they do very well against Colorado. It projected New Jersey to beat. Against Columbus, they projected New Jersey to beat Columbus last night. And I was really, and obviously they didn't. And going in, I was like, darn it, we're doing so well, and why would it come up with that?
And Spock would say that's illogical.
It was illogical in every sense. To the point where I had her go in and check all the formulas. Are you sure this is right? Like, yeah. And she gave me the 4 reasons it had that New Jersey would win that game. And we won some games that I definitely would have picked the other way. So we're going with it as it goes. But
you wouldn't have been 28-8.
I would not have been 28-8. Are you kidding me? No, there's no way. I mean, if you're over 500, that's awesome. We're at 800. That's 800 right now.
The computer is secretly a Pavel Zacha fan.
Yeah, something. I mean, I was just shocked. I did, some people are busting on me because I made a mistake actually because I picked the wrong game. I wrote the wrong game in my blog versus what was actually on the thing, so I flipped one.
Operator error, yes.
But for what it's worth, it was another game that I played just like Arizona and Carolina played twice last week, and 3 days earlier I picked Carolina to win, and they lost Arizona, so I should have picked. It should be picking Carolina again. So
I predict this show will soon be run by robots, but
no. But the interesting thing is, as we look through this, there is a really great race developing in the Atlantic Division for the playoffs. Granted, I spend more time looking at my projections than the actual standings, but there is something really interesting as it comes down here.
Well, okay, and tonight we have Boston playing Ottawa. I think it's in Ottawa. But those teams are starting to pull away from the pack. I mean, really, the battle is for the second wild card because you have Ottawa at 76 points. I'm doing this by memory. 76 points. Boston at 74. And if Boston wins tonight, then they're both 6 points ahead or 5 points ahead of the second wild card team, which is the Islanders. But right now, you've got the Islanders at 71, Toronto at 70. Florida at 69, and then Philly and Tampa at 68. You got 5 teams within 3 points. It's really packed within 4 points.
It is. No, it's very close. That is exactly. But let's look at now you've said that the actual standings. Let's look at how this thing plays out in the project. Because when you start looking at the actual schedules and back-to-back games and travel and all the stuff that we take into account in this thing, it really gets close, and it's closer than I thought it would be. This is what kind of shocked me last night when I was looking at this because Florida had been in that spot. Boston finally did take it over, but only by virtue of regulation wins, according to my thing right now. So here's what it actually looks like on this. So this is the technical. This is with 82 games played and how they're just having it play out. So if you see Boston here at 89 points, they are the playoff team, and then you have the two wildcard teams being the Rangers and the Islanders. In this, because mine has Columbus ahead up there, right? So. But here, this is where it gets crazy. Florida at 89, which is the same amount as Boston. Tampa at 88, which is one less than Boston, right? Toronto at 84. So really, there's 5 less.
I wrote getting an echo there for a second. I wrote an article yesterday looking at the Leaf schedule over the last 18 games, and they might have one of the toughest schedules.
They do. They do.
They play Columbus twice.
Yeah.
They play Florida, Tampa twice, Philadelphia, the teams that they're battling. They play those teams head-to-head 5 times. They play 6 games in the final 9 days of the season against Columbus, Pittsburgh, Washington. It's a ridiculous schedule.
That's a brutal schedule. The one thing they can hope for there, though, is, they're hoped for, and this is something that my thing doesn't take into account. The hope there is that when you play those really good teams at the very end of the season, there's nothing for them to play for.
Well, I'll tell you this. Last night I was on a show, and they put a gun to my head. They really did. You
go on that show again, Russ. That's not a.
Well, we'll see. It's up in the air right now. But
is it sponsored by Smith & Wesson?
It wasn't. But what they did was they said, well, aside from like Pittsburgh and Washington, who they clearly see that I like Pittsburgh better than Washington, who would you put your $2 on to come out of the East? Who would be that next team? And so I put the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Mm-hmm. That's possible. It really is. I've gone based to, I also do the projections in the what Columbus wants is to play Pittsburgh in the first round. That's what they want, basically, based on that. So if they do, and that's where they're lined up right now in my thing, like that. And in my thing right now, the Rangers, the best spot basically is the 7th, is the first wild card spot, right? Because that's where everybody wants to be, because that's where you play Montreal.
Except, I'm telling you, Montreal has built their team to beat the Rangers. So if I'm the Rangers, I don't know if I want to end up in that spot.
And you saw that over the weekend, because the Montreal, I think it was 4-1, right, Russ?
4-1.
It was not. Yeah, and Montreal. Okay, and we'll get to the GMs in a second. But again, I look at that Montreal team, and a guy like Steve Ott played well, and they've got all these sort of 4th line, 3rd line additions like Martinson and King. But the question is whether they'll be able to score, and they have to score probably 3. You don't need a lot of goals when it comes to Carey Price in the playoffs, but you probably need about 3. And I'd be challenged to see if that team can score 3 goals a game in the playoffs.
They may not have to.
Well, you're right, Russ. Here's the playoff thing. So basically, if it lined up like this, Pittsburgh would beat Columbus in 7, according to my thing. But Montreal, I have Montreal beating the Rangers in 6, and you're right. That is the one team. Now the Rangers, right now, so the Capitals are the Stanley Cup champion, and the only team in this thing when I was looking through it that can stop the Capitals is the Rangers. So.
Yeah. That makes sense too.
The Rangers need to get through, need to somehow get in line up with the Capitals, which means, falling to the 2nd wild card spot. Right. Which, and I'm sure the Islanders would be fine making that swap with them if that's where they end up,
If the Islanders are still in it. I know in your thing they are, but you're right, they would be fine with that.
This is the thing, if they're in it, but not only are they in it in my thing, but they are crazy in it.
I know.
And whether or not that's true or not, I don't know, but look at this. This is, and
I saw that. They're going to have to win another 10 in a row.
Well, they're on a long. They're on a long road swing right now. They've earned 3 of a possible 6 points because they played Dallas, Chicago, and yesterday they got hammered by Calgary. If they get through that road swing, then I think that they're probably the odds-on favorite to win that 2nd wild card. Because
the schedule gets very easy, Mike. You're right, and very, very easy. And they've got. Right now they're in it by 7 points. So that means that. And basically how my thing works is just like it is, if you beat the teams you should basically beat. That's the idea, with factors thrown in there for who plays against each other. But the biggest factor is just if basically things happen as they should, if the favorite wins. So when you're looking at this thing, the Islanders would have to lose to some teams that they're not supposed to lose to. That's really how it plays out.
Right.
You know what, the one thing the Metro is doing this year, and this is why they're talking about it at the owners' meetings, the Metro is blowing up this point system in the NHL and making an atrocity of it.
They are. You're completely 100% right. Explain what you mean by that, because that's really interesting.
Well, because you see all these teams just piling up points when you've got 3 teams in the division that have over 100 points. Then the Rangers are going to have 112 as the first wild card, and no one in the Atlantic can touch it.
Right.
It's crazy because it just shows you now that when you have weaker divisions, you have to have a better point system, because otherwise, you're going to be putting teams that don't deserve to be in the playoffs in.
Yeah,
I understood what the NHL's goal here was when it went back to sort of a quasi-divisional playoff format. They wanted to develop rivalries. I get that. But you know what? When the point disparity is as much as it is right now, this is an argument for going back to the 1 through 8.
Yeah.
This is because, I mean, having the 3 division teams, division winners be 1, 2, 3, and then having the points set up that way. Because if we do, we keep doing what we're doing now, it's going to continue to be in the Metro, where Washington and Pittsburgh face in the second round, and then you have weaker matchups for the Eastern and Western Conference Final. You lose Chicago, Minnesota. You lose Columbus, Pittsburgh in the first round, and to me that makes the playoffs not get better as they go along, but it gets worse as it goes.
Plus, the second and third spots in the Atlantic, do they even deserve to make the playoffs? On some years, they may not.
Right.
I would argue that if you wanted to compromise between what we're saying and what they are saying, is you could say the first 2 teams make it in each division.
That's fine.
The first 3, but then once the teams are decided who's making the playoffs, seed them 1 through 8. That's how I think it should be done. Because then you would get a situation where, because you're playing within the division, you get that, you want to have those divisional games matter, but then reseat based on points once you have your 8 teams. That way it would just be a lot fairer for everybody. And
the division winner maybe deserves at least 1 round where they have home ice.
I think they usually, maybe they wouldn't. You're right.
I mean, just think about how crazy this is. On your projections, you have the 3 in the Metro. And then you have the Rangers and the Islanders, all in the Metro, and then the Islanders have more points than even the third-place finisher in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year, Philadelphia was the wild card, was the second wild card team. They had 96 points. Detroit had 93, and they were third in the Atlantic. So that's the kind of disparity that we're talking about here. So I think that eventually the league is going to have to go back to and modify the way that you put the series together, because I just don't think I don't think the end result is good for the league in terms of the quality of the performance and the quality of the teams later on in the playoffs.
No, I agree completely. And
the 2 things that I keep hearing out of the GM meeting, which I always agree with the most, which are what I told you guys that I agreed with, was either 2 points and nothing for a win, or 3 points and nothing for a win, and nothing for a loss. And so far that's the prevalent thing that I keep hearing coming out of it.
It's surprising because I'm surprised by this. Like it felt like that kind of stuff was making a lot of headway like a couple years ago. And then
I think now they see it the way it is this year, and they're like, okay.
What they see are teams artificially still in the playoff race.
Right.
And great, that's good for parity and good for, maybe keeping a fan base, in it mentally. But in reality, the teams aren't in the race. They're just
like New Jersey. Don't tell me New Jersey's in it. Like, don't. I know you can make an argument.
Right, exactly.
But don't tell me they're in.
Right.
There's no way they're in it. I mean, that's part of the reason I did this too. I got frustrated by the whole thing of trying to look at the standings and figure out who the heck's in it. It's not. It's just there's no way New Jersey's in it.
But just to finish on the race in the East, I mean, Tampa Bay wins in Buffalo over the weekend on a bizarre Nikita Kucherov shootout goal, which that
wasn't bizarre. That was sleight of hand. It was awesome.
Do you think it was on purpose? Because
yes,
I'm skeptical.
It was on purpose.
Just because it's Kucherov, I agree with Russ. I do think it's on purpose because
I'll tell you why it was on purpose.
He's got tons of creativity.
Long follow through and already released the puck just to catch the goalie's eye, so he thought he didn't have the puck and was going to go somewhere else with the stick, and I think that's why it was on purpose.
Now, the funny thing is that they traded Filppula, they traded Boyle, they flipped Streit to Pittsburgh, and they've been playing, and they get rid of Ben Bishop, and they're better, they're playing better, and Stamkos is practicing. So now
this is why when we do the GM list, that one Steve Yzerman may rank pretty high on mine.
Yeah,
and now they're only 3 points out of a playoff spot, so that's
and they have a very good shot, because if they get Stamkos back at some point here,
listen, it's not an if, it's always a when.
Yeah.
And it's what Stamkos are you getting back? Are you getting 80% Stamkos, 50% Stamkos?
You take 80% Stamkos every day of the week.
Sure.
Yeah, and that could happen in a couple weeks. So we're looking at it's going to get. I mean, it's always a fun stretch between the trade deadline and the playoffs, because you get a lot of. Let's talk about what's happened so far now. So let's talk about the GMs a little bit here and get into that. Now that I'm not calling this the winners and losers of the trade deadline, because to me it's far more stretching deeper than that. Like, this is not.
So is this their entire career or just this season?
No, this is right now what they've done.
Right now.
This is where they are, and it's not just the season though. I mean, their whole career does play into this.
Okay.
Most effective, let's call it most effective and least effective general managers.
Right.
We don't upset anybody, but
okay.
I think that I mean, why don't you start? Who you got most effective?
Yeah. So why don't we alternate? Why don't we do?
Okay, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I was like, we'll all do one effective, then we'll all do one.
I'll do the one. My first most effective is Steve Yzerman. It actually is, and because he has managed to stay competitive, he has managed to fix a cap problem for next year. He has managed to get rid of a goalie where he knew wasn't going to sign with him, and he has managed to now open up cap space to sign another prospect. So that's, besides everything else he's done, having a good prospect system, having a lot of picks. He's done a tremendous job last few years.
Yeah, and he may not be done. And Yzerman's on my list as well. He may not be done. We may see one of those RFAs that they have this summer, because they have Palat, Johnson, and Drouin. He may not be able to afford to sign all three. He may want to clear out one of those defensemen, either Garrison or Braden Coburn, to open
Not
up.
Suster. Suster's got a lifetime contract.
Oh, God, yeah, you can't get rid of Suster. He's just, he's more important than Hedman on that team.
Yes.
Interesting. All right. So Yzerman is a good. I mean, Yzerman is it's hard to go against him. He's done so much. The only thing I will point out is that his team's not in the playoffs right now. Now you could argue that there's a lot of. I mean, his team was predicted to be the best team in the East. So
you just have to get in, and they're close.
Yeah, but you have to take into consideration the Stamkos injury. You have to take into consideration, sort of, and not Stanley Cup hangover, but they went deep in the playoffs 2 years in a row, and they sort of been wallowing around 500. But now, when it comes down to the last 6-7 weeks of the season, they've started to really kick it into gear. And if they keep playing the way they're playing right now, they're going to be battling down to that last day with the Islanders, Toronto, Florida, and Philly for that last spot.
Yeah.
Let me give it.
I don't see Philly is battling this year, Mike. I don't know why. I just don't see it.
No, but right now they're 3 points out. You can't say that they're not.
I know they won a couple of games here, and I agree with that. But I think that they just haven't shown an ability to be consistent enough to.
I agree, but I mean, until they fall back, I'm.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Let me go with the first ineffective one, and that's got to be Joe Sakic. I mean, honestly, it's like I think he's made some bad decisions. Obviously the whole thing with Patrick Waugh leaving was not under his control, but I think the reason that Waugh left is because there were certain players he wanted to have brought into the organization that didn't end up going there, and that was why he said thank you very much and left. But, signing Tyson Barrie to a 4-year extension, Barrie has been one of the worst minuses in the league. I mean, he's a good offensive defenseman, but they're paying him like a two-way guy, and he's not. The team structure is just, abysmal. They tried to put a salve on the wound of that team's defense by going out and signing Feder Tutin, Eric Jelena, bringing in all these patchwork guys on the blue line, and that just doesn't work in this league. You have to build your defense, get young guys to come in, and they haven't done that. They've tried to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, and it's not worked. So I think he's one of the worst GMs in the league. Sorry. Yeah, no, right now I think he's. It's you feel bad for him because the Patrick Waugh situation is not anything you would have wished on anyone, right? Like that was a situation where you had your coach who you really, not just your coach, but a guy who was very important in player decisions and who was involved with all the. So Patrick Waugh built a lot of this disaster that's going on right now, and people need to understand that. That's
all right.
Don't you think so?
I think so. My least effective right now. I think somebody who surpassed him is Garth Snow. I think he has surpassed him because he still has 3 goalies, which is crazy. He didn't make a single move at the deadline. Last year's deadline, he only got Shane Prince. He is in danger of not making the playoffs. Yep. This team desperately needs to make the playoffs for all the reasons that we've always outlined.
Yeah.
The drafts have been okay for him, but only really in the first couple rounds. The later rounds haven't been great. So I'm putting Garth Snow in that spot.
And he's on my list as well. And to override almost every other one of those things, the John Tavares situation is still in question.
Yep.
And honestly, that's the most important job of the general manager and the ownership of that organization is locking down your franchise player. And right now, with the state of the franchise the way it is, it's not a dead certainty that he's coming back. He probably is. He wants to stay there. I think that the whole reason that they were going after Matt Duchene before the deadline was to bring an effective player to play with Tavares, and maybe that'll happen in the summer. But the ineffectiveness of Garth Snow to not read the landscape and not look at his team and say, we got a lot of defense. There's a lot of defense teams that need defense out there. We can convert one of those defensemen into a scoring winger. And he did absolutely frickin' nothing.
I'm going to go with one of the least effective. Then we'll get back to effectives too. I'm going to go with Doug Armstrong here. I honestly think that, as much as I respect Doug Armstrong, as much as he's been a good general manager for many years and kept St. Louis a competitive team for a long time, and that team may soon have, I guess, the longest playoff run, right, if Detroit gets knocked out. But at the same time, what really upset me about Doug Armstrong is the way he's handled the last several pending UFAs he's had, and I think it's really. I mean, losing Backus, which I didn't think was a huge deal either, but he was a bigger part of that team than I think the outsiders like us would.
Sure.
From the outside, you're like, oh, Backus, yeah, he's all right. But that I can see why you wouldn't throw all that money at him. But he obviously had a bigger impact on that team in the room than we give credit for. And losing others as well through
Brower.
Brower, Oshie really pretty much they lost him, as well. I mean, there was a trade, but I still think that they were going to lose him. That's why they traded him.
Yeah.
And then because of all of that, seemingly going in trading Shattenkirk, which feels like because we lost a bunch of players for nothing, we got to get something for Shattenkirk, which I felt like that's kind of like the two wrongs make a right concept almost to me. It's like it doesn't make sense for me to trade Shattenkirk when you're a playoff team that's looking better all the time, playing better all the time.
Yeah, but
just go for it. I mean, it's not always about assets, and it's rare that you see an experienced GM fall for the asset thing. Like that. This is that, and that's what happened here. I think and I think it's just because there was so much pressure within St. Louis, and so many people saying he wasn't doing enough, that he moved Shattenkirk. And then I don't think they gave the proper credit to.
I'll come to the defense of Armstrong for in one sense, letting Brower and letting Backus go. You had guys like Fabry, you had Barbashev in Jaden Schwartz, who were in a position to step up and take over leadership roles in St. Louis. On defense,
they still have Jordan Schmaltz. They do.
Right. Well, yeah. I'm including every one of their prospects, but I'm just saying.
No, this is. For the Shattenkirk part, like for next year.
Right. I mean, there is a pipeline, but with Shattenkirk, I think the overriding factor is they're gonna sign Parayko to a long-term extension. They can only pay one of them. They can't sign Shattenkirk and Parayko to what Parayko is probably going to want, and then be able to pay somebody else. So it was
about that. But Mike, the thing that I think is often forgot about in this situation is the fact that Shattenkirk wasn't lost this year because you're in that situation. You're going to sign Parayko. Backus wasn't lost last year because he was suddenly a UFA. It's the years prior to that where you can make the deals to keep these guys longer.
How do we know Shattenkirk even wanted to stay ever?
We don't know that, right? And that's and because of the way things play out, we kind of doubt that in a way. Like I kind of get the impression that he said, "I'm just going to play for the Rangers, and that's what's going to happen." That's really what I still think is happening. So, but you still didn't have to trade him. He's still your property. You still could go the rest of the year. He's still a professional who's going to play for you. And and your team, you make a coaching change, you fire a coach, you bring another coach in, and your team starts to go on a run and plays a lot better, and then you rip out from under them.
See,
if the Backus, there was no reason to sign Backus for the contract that the Bruins signed him for. And you can't sit back and say Armstrong is wrong for not doing that. But you can sit back and say that 3 years before that or whatever, with the last contract was signed, he couldn't have gotten Backus for less than that at some point in there and made a deal saying, we'll extend you. And that's really that's where the GMs, often we look at the end product, but really it's before that where they make their money, because it's the guys who signed the guys before you get to danger zone. That's where they could have, and because Backus definitely wanted to stay in St. Louis. There's no two ways about it. I've talked to him. You've talked to him probably, Russ. It says like
I've not talked to him. No, but I know look, his charity's there. You know he wanted to stay.
He wanted to stay there. You could have made that happen. There was a way you could have made that happen without paying what Boston paid. So
well, I mean, yes, but the difficulty is that 5 years, and he was 32, I believe, and they didn't want to sign him for that long. Where the Shattenkirk thing comes in again, they're probably going to sign Parayko, and Parayko is probably going to be making, if they don't sign him to a bridge deal, I think they're probably going to try to lock him up as long term as possible. He's going to be over $5 million. So you can't sign him and Shattenkirk at the same time. Plus, the team is in a completely different place than they were 12 months ago. 12 months ago, they're facing Chicago. They had the confidence that they could beat Chicago and make a run, and they did. And then they got to the Western Conference Final. This year, they're lucky if they make the first round, and they're lucky to win a round. So I am one of those people who says if you have an asset and you can't sign it, you get as much as you can for it on the open market, and you call it a day. And that's what they did. And I don't think that Armstrong's decision to trade Shattenkirk was a bad one, because this team is not going anywhere.
Yeah. You bring up a stat about the Blues that I saw that was really good. It was on Reddit, I think. And the Blues goaltending, which we all agree has been the issue, right? That's been a problem this year and kept them away. Hitchcock was using a man-to-man coverage, and that's Hitch's typical defense, right? With that man-to-man coverage is 0.896 save percentage and 2.85 goals against average. They switched to zone coverage, with their new coach, 0.949 save percentage, 1.51 goals against average.
But the unfair part about that is, did Hitch have the right personnel to run his man-to-man, and is it the better personnel to run the zone? That's not on the coach if it's not in the coach to teach that.
I think that's on the coach, Russ. I mean,
if it's not his way,
that's the same thing I would complain about with Hextall. You're trying to coach a system for the players that you don't have.
Well, it isn't, but you have to get on the same page with the GM and get the team the way you want it.
Yeah. And I do agree there. I think there's a disconnect there's always been a disconnect between Armstrong and Hitchcock, and Armstrong and other coaches in St. Louis. I don't think that's anything new.
I think that's fair. Why don't we move on? Like my next one, I'm not even going to talk about on the least effective because it's Joe Sakic, and we talked about him. On my most effective, I'll go Stan Bowman. And there's a lot of obvious reasons. I'm going to bring up the one that gets least talked about now, and that is, and I don't know if it's happened yet or not, but if he gets Maxim Shalunov to come over and sign with them, tell me a GM that has gotten a Russian player to come over to bolster their late season push. Nobody's ever been able to do that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that in spite of trading first round picks, he in the last few years to add players like Antoine Vermette and Andrew Ladd, they still have a very productive organization developing the Ryan Hartmans, signing the free agents like Tyler Mott and Panarin out of the cage.
They got Campbell back. They
got Campbell back in the bottom pairing for $1 million, I think it was $1.5 million. They get Dallas to accept to trade back Johnny Oduya. They store him in Dallas for 1.5 years. He comes back at half the price. I mean, he's a wizard. He's an absolute wizard.
Yes. He is, and it's hard to argue with success. Obviously, the only thing I will throw in there is Bowman has done it as and this isn't even fair because success is what you are, but at the same time, it also feeds into itself, right? So the Blackhawks have it easier right now to get players to do that kind of thing. We talked about the kind of players that they can draft, which are players like they can go for the out of the norm players that they don't have to worry about. And they're such a great destination. I mean, players love playing in Chicago. But it's easy for us to look at now, and probably people who are,
Yeah, ask Kyle Calder how it was in Chicago.
Right, I know. There were periods of time in Chicago where there were a good 20 years when I was a kid where Chicago was, or maybe 10 years where Chicago really was insignificant.
But we're talking about the last decade. We're talking about
he's and all the things I'm saying are weaknesses. He's actually built himself, so I can't. I mean, he's been a big part of that, and I didn't give him credit in the beginning. It's a crazy organization to deal with, for sure. But they are definitely they've set up a bit of a gold standard for the NHL. They really have. They're a tough thing to top. And along those lines, I am going to go with who I think one of the best GMs in this league is, and that would be Doug Wilson in San Jose, who I honestly think doesn't get enough credit for what he does, and because he's been around for such a long time. But the Sharks have been consistently the Sharks have never been in cap trouble. They've been a consistent playoff team. They've had some playoff disasters, but they've been a good regular season team for almost all of Doug Wilson's career.
Yeah, he's in my top 5.
He's in mine as well. And I think other than the Brent Burns deal, I think the thing that Wilson deserves the most credit for is filling the bottom part of that organization with the young players coming in like Carlson, like Hurdle, Timo Meyer. I mean, they're Kevin LeBanc. He's building up. I mean, it's not just all on the back of Marleau, Thornton, and Couture and Pavelski. He's filled up that organization. He makes a little deal like going out and getting Yannick Hansen, going out and signing Joel Ward. He's filled that organization, so it's not just those star players. It's deep. It's tough.
I think Martin Jones was maybe his best trade. We can talk about Burns, and Burns was amazing. But I think getting Martin Jones. Because that changed things in San Jose. Big time.
I mean, look, the Burns thing was interesting because that was the draft in Minnesota, and I actually was doing some, fan shows, and Upper Deck had Brett Burns at a signing, and they had him pre-signed before the trade was made.
So
and he did show up.
Wow,
he did.
He's a good guy. He's going to show up.
And Burns showed up, and he signed autographs, and fans were saying goodbye to him.
That was crazy.
And it was interesting. If you remember that at the draft is when Burns got traded.
The early years of Brett Burns' career were really weird because they remember that going back and forth to see a forward, you see a defenseman.
Well, and that's the thing here is that the Brent Burns that you see now in San Jose is not the Brent Burns that Minnesota traded. He's a completely different player. And
that's a shade since then.
But I don't know if this is the fact, but I do remember a few years back, Larry Robinson coming in as an assistant coach there, and it just seemed that there was a bit of a and this may not, I've never talked to Burns.
I played into it. I've talked to people in San Jose that they talk about that a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, because all of a sudden he's not exactly, to go back to our Stratomatic analogy, he's not a one on defense anymore. He's not a guy you walk around. He's not a Phil Housley, and that was the problem. He was a big Phil Housley back in the day. He was somebody who was not a good defensive player, and now he's a good enough defensive player, and he's a plus offensive player.
Right. I mean, to me, the thing about Doug Wilson that I'll go back to is that he has been, we talk about Marleau and Thornton and the great players that they are. He's been saddled with Marleau and Thornton for the last several years. I mean, we're not talking about. I mean, they were great players. They're still really good players, but they're not players that should be making $6-7 million a year. But he's been giving them that and making it work somehow with the rest of it. And it's hard for teams to do that. We've seen it happen so many times where teams get saddled with these legacy type players.
Well, when you have the Tierneys and the Donskoys chipping in,
he found a way to do it, and he's found a way to develop it. And last year they came very close. This year they could be dangerous again in the West. I mean, they really.
And after this year, he doesn't have to pay that money to Marleau and Thornton. Now he may bring them back, but it might be at half the price because.
Right.
I mean, and I think, if you can pay Marleau and Thornton what you pay one of them right now, if they would take a deal at $3.5 to $4 million a year as they're coming to the tail end of their career, that would be a great benefit to the Sharks. Now that's up to Wilson to be able to convince them to do that, and if not, then he may have to walk away from one of them.
If I were Wilson at the, when the summer hits, I would take them all out to like a restaurant, and I would have it, separate checks. and I would basically say, this is how it's going to go, guys. You guys are going to make the same amount. Let's agree on the amount right here.
Yeah, I think they've done that before. I mean, they have made the same amount before.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to do.
Promenade in Sunnyvale, there on Route 101. You're going to go to like the to Bonefish Grill or something like that. And
I think they'll go someplace better than Bonefish Grill, but yeah,
you know, it's San Jose, Mike. You got your choices here. Bonefish Grill, and I lived out there for a little while. So you're going to have like
go to Wendy's,
or Joe's Tacos, which are really awesome. So you can have your options there. But yeah, there's a Wendy's every couple blocks, so you're okay there. El Camino is the ultimate rumble strip in the world. People out there are probably cracking up, but it's like it is the one road where you can literally feel like you are driving on a movie set where someone is rolling a film behind you of a background, and that like, oh, there's Denny's again, there's Denny's again, there's Denny's again. It's just that road is incredible. It's incredible in its similarities as you drive along. But I think I don't often say this about players because I'm usually pretty player friendly in this kind of thing. But if there are two players who owe it to Doug Wilson to take half the money, it's Marleau and Thornton. Right. I mean, they are two players who should look back and say, yeah, you got it, man. We're in 100%. Because he's given them money when they didn't deserve it necessarily. And he's maintained, and they've managed to stay where they are. Marleau's really tied into the community. I know my friend's youth kids are on the same kids as his youth hockey team. His kids' youths are on the same hockey team together. I mean, can't speak today, but you know that there are Marleau. The Marleaus are part of the big part of the community out there, and Joe Thornton loves it there. Yeah, I mean, both of them. You know, you hate to say that about players, but both. I think both might. You wouldn't be shocked if you saw both of them say, "Okay, yeah, we're both in for $3.5 million a year." I think that's not a big deal for them, and and at this point, they are really such a part of that community and part of that team. The fans out there don't really feel like they're overpaid. I've talked to them about it. They don't have the same impression that most of us have about Marleau and Thornton. The local impression is very different.
Now, I think my third most affected might surprise people.
Go for it.
It's Dean Lombardi, and I'll tell you why.
It does surprise people. Continue.
Well, because again, he has been saddled with some contracts himself.
Yeah.
Also,
making.
But that's okay. He also got Marian Gaborik, and that helped him win a cup. He has a very deep system thanks to Michael Fuda, which definitely feeds into if he overpays on a contract, he's got an umbrella. He's got a safety net. Right. Look, Jonathan Quick, go back all the way back to Jonathan Quick. I remember hearing about him in basically when he was playing up in Reading. Not thinking that much of him.
Yeah.
I think the chickens are going to come home to roost, though, this summer because, I mean, yes, he created his own problems with the Dustin Brown contract, with the Gaborik contract, but now he's still got those contracts. I don't know how he gets out of them, and he has to sign Toffoli and he has to sign Pearson this summer. That's going to be tough.
Managed to do it though.
I know, but I will be fascinated to see how he does it, Russ, because honestly, I don't see how he's able to do it unless he trades. Unless he gets some sucker to take. Dustin Brown's an effective player, but he's not a almost $6 million player. Marian Gaborik has been a great player at times in this league, but he's under contract.
Helped him win a cup too. It's just.
But he's under contract. Gaborik is under contract for another 4 years at almost $5 million, and he's 35 years old.
Doesn't matter. I mean, you can't.
It does when you have
everybody.
To pay
Every GM has bad contracts if they've been around long enough.
Right.
But the point is, he overcomes them. He's got guys like Kevin Gravel playing on defense, and it's not hurting them. And they're in the race. And if they get in it, no one will want to play them.
Right.
No, yeah, that's for sure. And mainly that I think that's Quick though. I really think that's Quick. Quick is the reason.
It's everything. It's Sutter. It's Quick. It's everything.
I don't think they have the depth that they've had to beat the problem in the playoffs. Like they're not, but Quick can win anything. So that's what it comes down to. Like he has the ability to find levels.
You can just go back to Drew Doughty. I mean, people were calling him fat at the draft.
No, I remember. Yeah, he was amazing, and oh my gosh, he was incredible the other night too. I watched one of the games.
And the Kings overlooked that and didn't listen to the garbage, and they drafted him, and they have one of the best defensemen in the league.
All right, I have to go with Brian McClellan. All right. Okay. Because we're not, and I think that it's just like, and it's obvious that the Capitals are the best team in the league again for the second year. He's only been there now, remember, for 2 years.
Right.
In that period of time, like George, it's a contrast. George McPhee was there for 17 years. David Boyle was there for 15 years before that. And this team has won the President's Trophy twice, and once was last year. And they're going to win it again this year.
Yes.
So you're looking, and now I'm not saying that this isn't McPhee's team that Brian McClellan has, because a lot of it is, but he's also done some really key things, mainly I think hiring Barry Trotz and figuring out that and allowing, you know, Barry Trotz to control Ovechkin to a degree. And that's a big deal. And it sounds like it's not, but that's a big thing to be able to do. That's something that George McPhee wasn't able to do.
And McClellan deserves a lot of credit for getting Shattenkirk, but the thing is, and the organization is in a good place because they have some young players. They've got a young goalie in Samsonov. They've got Vrana and a few other prospects. But it all comes down to, do they win the Stanley Cup?
Oh yeah, no, it does, no question. But I mean, Oshie too. I mean, Oshie has been incredible for the Capitals. I mean, way better than I think any of us thought he'd be. You know, and to the point where
that's why I there's a lot of guys in the middle of this conversation, because like McClellan's in the middle for me because I want to see results. Right? I didn't like the Mike Richards trade. But he's done some good things too. There's no question.
It was a signing. It was just
Mike Richards signing. Sorry, yes.
It was just a signing. It really didn't hurt them at all. I mean,
no, but they needed something more
to
win the cup, and all they came up with was Mike Richards. To me, that was a strike against them.
I'll just go through my list here quickly, just shotgun style. Chuck Fletcher deserves a lot of consideration for not only the Hansel deal, but the fact that he's put their organization in place to be able to allow them to trade their first and second round pick because they have Tuck, Greenway, Cunnin. The Russian kid, was it Kaprizov?
They're scouts, really.
And Eriksson Ek. They're in a very good position for the next few years. Jim Rutherford, the Kessel deal, Justin Schultz last year. This year, getting Streit in this bizarre three-way deal.
And Sullivan for him too. I mean, Sullivan.
Yeah, right. Gives them a chance at a second straight Stanley Cup. On the ineffective side, I have to say Don Sweeney. I mean, I think some of the draft picks are decent, but the way that organization has been run the last few years is just, I don't think it's becoming of an organization the stature of the Bruins. Chaika, just because he botched, he is as good as he did on the Hansel deal, he botched the Verbata deal, and I think that you could have gotten more. I understand your viewpoint, Eck, but the thing is, you have a guy out there you can get an asset for. You can't be ridiculous and say, I want a first-round pick for him. You set a reasonable price and you get it, or you don't even try to trade him. And the last one is Tim Murray. Tim Murray is getting excoriated in Buffalo because they had assets that they needed to trade. They're not a realistic playoff team now. He had Franzen, he had Kulikov. They could have gotten draft picks for him, and he struck out completely. I don't know if he was asking for too much, but at 301, when you're left holding the bag, that's a pretty bad thing. So Tim Murray deserves a lot of
– Just Tim Murray for a second, and Chaika too. But
Chaika and Murray round out my list too. They do.
No, not for me. I think he did a fine job. I would have done the same exact thing he did with Verbata because I think he had to.
What about Shane Doan? Why didn't you trade him for an asset?
Because Doan made it crazy. There were only a couple teams he don't wanted to go to, and those teams didn't really want that. They tended to be jerks.
So no team wanted Shane Doan.
No, not the teams that he wanted to go to. I mean, the teams that he wanted to go to. That's what I was told. I mean.
See, I'm not buying it. I guarantee you, there was a team that if the demands weren't high, that he wanted to go to, he could have gone.
But the problem with where he might have misplayed Doan was Doan didn't really want to leave until the Hansel trade, which was a couple days before. So he ended up very little time to make that happen, and he was also dealing with Verbata. So there was if he had told Doan, listen, I'm trading Hansel no matter what. We got to get so let's move you to even with him or whatever. They could have probably done something better. Murray, here's what I talked to somebody in Buffalo about this, and it was really interesting because I said, why didn't they trade nothing away? And it's different, because you look at the two teams that didn't do anything in my mind, the Islanders and the Sabres, right? Mm-hmm. And the Islanders, I don't get why they didn't do anything. Because they're a team that was a playoff team last year. They're a team that's continually, the Sabres, how it was sold to me, and I kind of bought it the way it was sold to me. Maybe it was just very good sales. Was this is a team that doesn't want them to play the final month and a half of the season like they're a tanking team again. He wants them to continue to play good hockey. They want them to continue. They know they're not going to make the playoffs, but for what they could get, They want these players to get used to playing in a system that's trying to win all the time. And they spent enough years and enough time as a tanking team to try to get, you know, the best. And they've lost. And remember, they lost McDavid when they tried to get they tried it, and they didn't get McDavid.
They didn't lose McDavid. They never had McDavid.
I know, but they, in their mind, they had the worst record. You know, they didn't get McDavid.
I'm not disputing your source, Ak, but that is so much bunk, really, because they spent half the season, and they actually played better with guys like Justin Falk, not the good Justin Falk, but the borderline NHLer Justin Falk, and Taylor Fadoon on their blue line. And you're telling me that they couldn't play with those guys the last 15 games of the year?
And Bogosian trade, the Kulikov contract, the Matt Molson contract, there's a big list there.
No, I agree with that. I'm just talking. I'm not saying he's effective.
I will give Tim Murray credit where he deserves it, and they have a group of young players: Baptiste, Carrier, Justin Gooley, Brendan Gooley. They have a group. Alex Nylander, who a lot of people are saying is not doing well in Rochester, but I think he's a very good young player, and he's only 19 years old.
That's fine. He may need another year there. Who cares?
But they have a good group of young players, but he has completely mishandled the situation when it comes to the players that were existing on that roster. Trading Pysyk for Kulikov. You know, they were hoping Kulikov would have a breakout year, would have a year, you know, going into free agency, and he was one of the worst defensemen in the NHL. But you still could have moved him at the deadline for a 4th or 5th round pick, and I'm sure there was teams interested, but he didn't jump at the deal, and I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you might be right. I'm just saying what I was told, and I think that.
No, I mean, what you're told. Hey, everybody, there's two sides to everything. I just think at the end of the day, I still look at their blue line, and it's not any better than 2 years ago.
No, it isn't. They haven't made the right pick. They haven't made. I mean, they've made some. I mean, they're moving the Tyler Myers for Evander Kane trade is not a good trade in my mind at all. I just still think that that's a terrible trade.
Yeah, it's not a good trade.
You know, and then they have to go out there and find a defense, but. That's all the time we have for today, guys. Really, really good, fast show as always. We'll be back again tomorrow, and so thanks for everybody who's commenting on the website about their list of GMs. I'm going to post in my little response along with what you guys have in about an hour or so here. So and we'll catch up more then. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. There's I think 5 or 6 games on the schedule tonight. So
four.
Maybe four, yep.
Boston, Ottawa, and Tampa. Well, yeah, there are 4.
Yeah, there's some good.
Thanks for that, Mike.
Right. I mean, yeah. So if you're curious, get up there. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, actually, because we have the predictions for tonight's game are Ottawa with a regulation win over Boston, Washington a regulation win over Dallas, the Rangers an overtime win over Tampa. Excuse me, and San Jose a regulation win over Winnipeg. So we'll see. Those are the 4 games you got. We'll see how it plays out. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.